Another Jeepin' with Cool Guy video. What else have you got to do with your time? The Jeep CJ7 or 5 frame. It's usually the bane of the existence of the CJ7 owner, because the way that AMC built them, they're boxed frames, which basically means that the frame in itself is a box, it's square. 2 pieces of metal folded into a square and welded together. And yes, horrible welding job. But anyways, they didn't really do a very good job of 2 things. One, putting proper drainage in the bottom part of the frame at certain points. And also, they didn't really do any rust proofing. I mean, it's just, these things for the most part kind of almost rusted out on the lot. How did I get my frame to this state? Well, I'm going to show you how we did that. What I want to start with is the spots that are most characteristic of rusting out. Number 1 area is right back here, the very back part of the frame, right where it meets up with the cross member. What happens is dirt, mud, everything builds up into this area, and it just holds moisture because there's no drainage underneath here or really back here. There's a couple little spots that after I have already put on the cross member, I left open so that it does drain out a little bit better. But the problem is that there was no paint, no coating done to the inside of the frame. So when all that stuff builds up and it gets moisture in there, it just rots out from the inside. There's a company called, I don't know, Rust Busters, I think it may be. But they do make a boxed frame support that you can weld onto this. My frame was in really good shape, so what I did was when I had to replace the cross member. You can see that in another video on my channel. But when I took the cross member off, I rototilled for the most part the frame, and I'll show you real quick how I did that and what you need to do to make that happen. Before I show you how we cleaned out the frame, here's spot number 2. It's right here. So this area of the box frame is actually 3 pieces. So you have the outer part that is one singular fold piece. This is 2 pieces welded together and then welded in to make the box. But then again, there is a hole right here that does actually drain out. But the problem with it is that it's actually up on the angle up here. So the mud and dirt builds up and then it just rusts out through here, and this whole component comes apart. So you'll see on some of the more rusted out ones that the metal right in this area, in this drain area, is really super thin, or it's rusted out right through here. Last but not least is the front shackle hanger right above the firewall mount, body mount, and right behind the engine mount, right in here. There is no drainage anywhere on this at all. So this area isn't get as much dirt, mud, and so on, just because it's behind the front wheels. And for the most part, your wheel's going to be about here, depending on how big it is. So the wheel well kind of ends right about here. So it doesn't really build up all that much, but this area still has no drainage. So anything that comes in from here, that comes down through the frame, or even from the side, it just winds up building up in this area, and this area rusts out through here. All right, so let's talk about how we actually cleaned out the frame. All right, to do this, and to be honest with you, the only way that you're going to be able to do this is if you take off and are going to replace your cross member, your rear cross member, because you have to have a big access point to the frame. So Yeah, it's one of those things where if your frame is obviously in good shape, then maybe you could pressure wash it. I don't know how else you would clean it out, maybe with some air. But really the reason that you want to clean out your frame is because I'm going to show you what I use to actually internally coat and future-proof, rust-proof, hopefully, the frame so that I never have this problem again and this thing winds up becoming a family heirloom. So to begin with, you're going to need 3 things really. You'll probably need a piece of PVC pipe. I just used, how big is this thing? It's a 1/2 inch, and it's fairly flexible, but it's also got some nice rigidity to it. This is going to be the piece that you actually insert into the frame with your rototilling device on it. So you want this thing to have some durability to it. And also, let's see, how long is this thing? Let's see, I'm 6.5, 7 feet. Second and the third thing you're going to need is, I think this is an 1/8 inch uncoated cable. I got about 15 feet of this because as you can tell, you see how this stuff is all kind of unwound. There are points when this thing, these pieces actually get caught on the inside of the frame on some of the edges, and it winds up overspinning, and then it kind of, almost like a rubber band, kind of draws itself in. So when you do this, you'll understand what I'm talking about, but I'll give you a little bit more instructions in here in a minute. And then you're going to need a clamp system. So you can get this at Lowe's, Home Depot, any of your hardware stores. And what I used was this 1/4 inch, just simple chain, and I cut 4 or 5 lengths. So I've got a couple spacers in here just to keep the chain separated. This is one piece that is double looped. Here is another piece that is double looped. And then there's another one here in the middle, which is obviously kind of bent up on itself. But then it's all done with, or all completed with this heavy-duty 1/8 inch cable clamp. So what you do here is you're basically just creating your rototiller. This is like a grinder, I guess, in a way. But the thing just spins as fast as your drill will let it go, and it just beats the rust off and pulverizes anything on the inside of your frame. Okay, so here's what you do next. Once you've got this completed, you're going to want to take your cable. You're going to want to have a washer, feed a washer on the end of this cable that is going to be in between your clamp and the end of the pipe. And you're going to feed your cable down through this all the way to the other end. And then you're going to want to cut it off about 3 to 4 inches longer than the total length of the pipe, or your guide pipe. The reason that we do that, one, is to put a washer on the end of this, is so that this doesn't get caught up in the end of the pipe. It provides just like a little bit of a, kind of like a gasket, if you want to call it that. You don't want to go much longer than that, because then as it's spinning along, if this thing does wind up catching on the inside of the frame, then it will bind up here instead of inside of the pipe and letting the pipe keep the binding from happening. And then you wind up with this kind of a scenario. Alright, so once you get that all done, get yourself a hand drill. Don't use anything like a really, really heavy duty drill, because the torque on those things is way too much. You just want a regular, light, variable speed drill. And you feed the pipe in back through either one of the frame ports. And what I did is I started at the very end here and then started the drill kind of at a medium speed. And then I would slowly file it all the way up into the pipe, or into the frame, and then pull it back out. Now there are certain points when, as you're going along, you can pick the speed up, but you want to make sure that you know where all of the catch points are inside of your frame. Because if you get the chain caught in there, it binds up the cable and this thing will snap off and it winds up becoming a problem. But once you get this thing all ground out and spun out, then you can just take a leaf blower or compressed air and blow the frame out, and it gets all the rust out, it gets all of the mouse nests, everything that builds up inside of here, and gets really a nice shape. That's what I would suggest doing before we do the inside of the frame coating. There's not a lot of products on the market right now to do internal frame treatment. One thing you don't want to do is use anything that's rubberized or something that just coats without treating or conditioning the inside of the metal. I'm not endorsing this. They're not paying me for it. It's just, this is the best stuff that I found on the market, and it works really well. It's a product by Eastwood. It's their internal frame coating. It comes in two different colors, a green or a black, and it comes with this spray nozzle that has this kind of almost like fanning head at the end of it. What I would suggest doing is using a coat hanger and taping up the tube to that coat hanger, and you can use this as a guide and then slide it in your frame and go as far as you want and be able to turn it and pull it back out. So I'm not gonna do this because I've already done it. But what I will suggest doing is, one, look into this stuff. Go out to eastwood.com. They have a video on their website on how to use this stuff. It talks about using the coat hanger with the tube. How much is it going to take to do a frame of a CJ7? If you get it cleaned out well enough, you could get by with 2 cans, maybe. I would recommend 3, and be very liberal with it when you're spraying it on the inside of your frame. And make sure that when you're doing it, you twist the nozzle as you're pulling it and pushing it through the frame, because what it will do is it gives you more of a fanning effect, and then this stuff seeps into all of the crevices, and I think it's got zinc in it. Yeah, it's got a zinc additive that's a resin base, so it winds up coating, conditioning, and encapsulating any rust that's on the inside. And if you do it well enough, you basically completely treated the inside of your frame. You're going to want to do this after any of your welding work. If you have to do any welding on the frame, I definitely do it beforehand because you don't want to catch this stuff on fire. What I would recommend doing is taping off all of the holes in your frame before you actually spray this stuff, because what that will do is it will keep that overspray from shooting out of the holes as you move the nozzle past it. You don't want to waste this stuff. It's about $20 a can. 3 cans is going to be about 60 bucks, maybe $10 for shipping, so it's about $70, $80, give or take, to do the inside of your frame. But it is so worth the money. All right, that's the inside of the frame. Now, you need to deal with the outside of the frame. If you want to sandblast it, perfectly fine. I just didn't have the means to do that. I didn't want to spend the money on that. I just took a wire brush, took an angle grinder with about 5, 6 different wire brushes that I got from Harbor Freight, and I just peeled all of the paint off. Got in there in the really tight spots with some of the smaller rotary wire brushes, but I cleaned off every single component of paint, or if there was any surface rust. I got it all cleaned up and fairly shiny, and it looked really good. And then after that, once I got everything into tip-top shape. It took me about 3 days. I mean, it's going to take you a little while, but it's well worth the effort. But once I got it all sanded down and cleaned up and paint stripped, then I used this stuff called Chassis Saver. It's from a company called Magic Paint. It's like Pour 15. I mean, there's a whole bunch of those kind of zinc additive paints that seal, convert, condition rust and metal to where it's like this hard, super hard epoxy that is really effective for frame preservation. I don't have anything against any of the other ones. I just went with the Chassis Saver just from, I've heard that there are certain states in the Midwest that their Department of Transportation uses that stuff on the undercarriages of their road maintenance vehicles to prevent rust from like snow plows, you know, like salt and so on. So if, as far as I'm concerned, if a Department of Transportation, a state-run group, is using something to prevent rust out of the frames on their utility trucks, that's good enough for me. And this is the second vehicle that I've done this stuff with, and I'm really happy with it. So anyways, I put that stuff all on with a roller brush, and then I used a paintbrush to get into the little crevices, because you want to make sure that you fill in every possible piece of exposed metal, everywhere, all of the seams around the body mount supports, everywhere that there could possibly be exposed metal, put this stuff on. You could use a sprayer to put this stuff on, but one, I didn't really want that super smooth of a finish, and I didn't want to, that stuff, when it gets into your hands or if it gets onto your skin, it sticks around for like days. I mean, this is from like 4 days ago, and I still have this stuff in my skin. Like, it does not come off. I didn't want to spray that and then, you know, have that mist all over the place. So I did mine with a roller brush. The Chassis Saver is actually UV sensitive. So once I had put that down, I gave it a day and a half, 2 days to dry. And then I just got some Rust-Oleum semi-gloss black industrial paint, and I spray painted the entire frame, and that brought it up to this nice semi-gloss finish. And what that does is it coats the Chassis Saver so that the Chassis Saver is never exposed to any UV light. And then, as you can see, this is the result. I think it looks absolutely fabulous. It will take you a little while, but the thing about it is that you're getting the frame into the right state, because the last thing you want to do is, you know, shortcut yourself when putting, you know, the frame into the right shape. Yeah, I mean, spend a little bit of money on it, get it right, because this is the thing that your restoration is riding on. And if you don't fix it right, you know, in a few years, you're going to be right back to where you started. So as far as I'm concerned, I have basically future-proofed this frame. I mean, they're not the best frames in the world by any means, but it's not going to rust out. And it's going to be solid for decades to come. Other things that I've done to this to future-proof it, rust-proof it, wear-proof it, is on the leaf springs. I rebuilt the leaf springs. I did the sliders, I don't know what these things are actually called. It's little plastic pieces that help provide a buffer between the different leaf springs. And then the anti-slap or the separation clips. I powder coated all these things before I even put them on, but I sandblasted and cleaned up all of the leaves within the leaf springs, and then I put the chassis saver on this, and then I spray painted them the semi-gloss black. So these things, you know, outside of some pitting, fine, whatever, are basically brand new leaf springs. Even things like the wheel knuckle and the link, the sway bar link, the steering dampener mount that goes right underneath the axle mount above the leaf spring. All that stuff has been powder coated, and it's all been done in semi-gloss black, so it looks like it's a uniform job put together. So everything on here, the entire chassis, the entire frame, has either been sandblasted and done in chassis saver because it was too big for me to powder coat, or I have powder coated in semi-gloss black. Along with that, or all those other pieces, I've also done the axle in the chassis saver with the semi-gloss black. So the cool thing about that is that it all looks like it was done with the exact same thing. And pretty much most of the classic vehicles, their frames, axles, you know, the whole undercarriage, the chassis is done in semi-gloss black. So it makes it look like it's period correct, and it's got a nice look to it. If you were to go with like a flat or a matte, that stuff is really hard to get dirt out of, and it also shows off scuffs really easily. The great thing about this chassis saver and the powder coating is the stuff is kind of bulletproof. I mean, it really takes a severe blow for this stuff to come off and to expose the underside metal. All right, there you have it. That's how I've restored my 1979 CJ7 chassis. It's not quite a rolling chassis just yet because I still have to do the axle shafts and the wheel bearings and those types of fun things. Hopefully that'll be another video coming here in the near future. Anyways, I will put links in the description to all of the products that I have used to do this. If you have any questions in regards to the techniques that I used to do this, ask them in the comments. I'll respond as fast as I can. And last but not least, and the most important part about all of this, like and subscribe. Keep the Jeep CJ7 channel alive.